Hey, my name's Paul. In this video, I'm going to show you how to integrate Apify into N8N in the most efficient way possible. Let's get right into it. I'm going to go ahead and create a new workflow inside of N8N, just so we can get started with some things here. But basically, a lot of the reason I want to make this is because they don't have a built-in module to access Apify. N8N doesn't, that is. And if you're coming from Make, it's really easy to run these workflows. You basically have 3 different models or modules you'll use. You'll have your run the actor, and then you'll watch for the actor to complete, which will essentially set up a webhook for Apify's endpoints to post to whenever the actor is done. So it'll send the dataset ID to that webhook, and then after that, you can use another module to get the dataset item IDs. But N8N doesn't have any of those. So if I go ahead, and that's fine because it's really easy, but if I search for Apify, it's not there. And yeah, so I'm just going to break down how to use this API because it is really good. Apify is an amazing service. So I'm going to search for HTTP requests. Basically, what HTTP requests lets us do is connect to any endpoint that we can. So if you're in the automation space, or you're building flows for your own business or something like that, you've got to learn how to use these things. Methods, URLs, authentication, JSON, that type of thing. You've got to be able to send requests to APIs that aren't directly built in. Otherwise, you're going to run into a ton of issues and limitations. So, for example, let's use, I would use this Apollo lead scraper. I'm trying to think of something that's not going to be too crazy. One thing I do want to point out is Apify's API is like incredibly detailed. Like, you can use so many of these endpoints. So if I was to go to usage down here and copy this API, actually, this is a good example I can show you guys before we actually run an actor. Let's get the monthly usage. Now, we just fired up another account to use to save money and everything. But basically, I'm going to break down how this URL works. So, and I'll regenerate my API key, so don't worry about copying it. But basically, we have this URL, okay? So this is the URL that we are sending the data to. And if you look at this question mark here, this might be easier to open up in Google Docs. So let me just show you. So this essentially is the URL, this https://api.apify, up into the point where this monthly thing, okay? So I'm just going to space this out. After this, we have a question mark. Now, if you don't know, this is called a query string, and I believe it can also be called a search string. But basically, we have a value here, and then you can always figure out what the or the name and then the value. And the name is always going to be right after the question mark or the ampersand, which will be an and symbol. So this, if you have multiple of them, basically you have this question mark, which basically shows that there are query strings, and then you have the name of the query string and then the value that goes inside of it. And the way you can actually simulate this without even using a URL is if I turn on send query parameters and I was to just copy token and then the token value, which is just the query string for our API key, and I was to just backspace everything after this question mark, including the question mark, and run this test step, this API endpoint is still going to work. So, maybe if you're dynamically accessing your API key, maybe if you have an Airtable or a data store, something like that, and you want to put it in here, you can do that. But yeah, you're going to come across that a lot, especially in tools like email verification tools. They use that a lot, and I really hate, question mark email equals and domain equals. It looks terribly formatted in my opinion. So I would just add the parameters here. So, you can have, if you're using an email verification system, you have email and then you feed an email and you'd have domain. But just being able to identify these is really good. If you have multiple query strings, it's going to look like this. So you'd have question mark, and then you would have an and right here. And then you would have the name. I believe this is how you format this. You would have the name of your query string. So if it was email, then you would equal it to, an email that you wanted to verify or something. But that's basically how the query strings work. So we're going to use this for now. We're going to have this. And then if I run this again, you can see that we get the output. Whoops, I did not actually add them. So token is here. Let me go back to, where did I have the endpoint up? It's this API. Let me view my API key, copy this in, and then paste it in. Okay. So if we do this test step, now we get data back. So that's how the query strings work. In terms of parameters, you're not going to need, or sorry, headers, you're not really going to need them too much because the authorization, if you're used to having an authorization header and then bearer API key, you don't actually need that because we have that in the token. And that's just how Apify's API is set up and how it accepts it. Body is very important though. So I'm going to show you real quick. Maybe we can do like a YouTube transcript scraper, something really simple. And just search for transcripts, YouTube transcript scraper, $20 a month. I don't want to do that. Just want something like really short. YouTube transcripts, $7. Okay, we'll use this. So basically, the way you can run workflows, and basically what I mean by that, sorry, run scrapers. So if I come over to Make, I'm assuming most of you have probably worked with Make at some point or other. Basically, the model that we, or module, I keep saying model, that we want to set up to, basically mirror an N8N is this one. It's going to be Apify run an actor. And so this is pre-configured in Make, but we can simulate this request by going to this, and you'll see every time you're on an actor's page. So this is the YouTube transcript scraper by Caramello. On this homepage, you can see this API button at the top. And what you're going to want to do is click on API endpoints. And you can see we have a run actor endpoint. We have a run actor synchronously. This basically runs it and then waits for it to finish. This is not efficient at all. I wouldn't do this ever. Like even if we're using a short workflow. Basically, when you're running these Apify scrapers, there's a certain method I like to use. I'll run it, and then I will have a webhook that Apify posts to. So we're only going to try and get the data set items back when like Apify tells us, hey, this is actually done. And it's only going to tell it, like if it has an error, it's still not going to trigger. So I'm going to show you how to set that up as well. Run actor synchronously and get data set items. That just waits for it to finish. And then when it is done, it will get them back. Again, I wouldn't do that. And then there's just a whole bunch of different ones. Get last run data set items. You can do that if you want to, if you've run it before. Get the last run, get a list of your runs, build actor, get list of builds, delete the actor, update it, get the webhooks attached to it. There's a lot of different endpoints you can use. Most of these, unless you're a developer or something, you're not going to use realistically. Matter of fact, if I'm being real, it's probably just run actor for most of you guys. So what I'm going to do is copy this endpoint, and then we're going to paste it in here. And I'm just going to delete these query strings for now because it's at the end, and I've already shown you how those work. But what we do want is this method. So you have post, you have get, you have put, delete, patch. There's a whole bunch of different ones, but usually when we're triggering something to run on a service, or, a lot of the time on email verification tools, usually when you're sending a request and you're not necessarily pulling back data, it's going to be a post request. Now, if we're doing something like getting info from the server that's already there. So say when this is done, when the actor's done, it has our info stored in the Apify servers. We want to get that data set back. So we use a GET request. So I hope that makes sense. But basically, we're going to change this method up here to post. And don't get too worried about the JSON. This is really easy. We're going to toggle on this send body option. And then we're going to change the specify body to using JSON. And then we're going to go into here. So you see these little fields, right? We have description, thumbnail, keywords, comments, blah, 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 blah. We have the URL for the video. We have the select output format. We have a whole bunch of different stuff. But if I come over to JSON, the ones that we have toggled on, so these I don't think will appear. Let me check for channel ID. Yeah, so that's not going to come up. Basically, we have this different info, and it's configured just like we have it in the manual, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. So we can configure these different toggles via an API. So say you had a list and a Google Sheet of different transcripts or different videos you want to get the transcripts for. and you would bundle them into an array, which is here, basically you could set those as variables. It doesn't necessarily you don't have to come into here, paste in the URL, copy this JSON, come back to here. It wouldn't make any sense. So that's exactly what we want to do. I'm not going to use a Google Sheet. I'm just going to use one video, probably my most recent video or something. Basically, what I'm going to do is copy this JSON, and then I'm going to paste it into here. And as long as we have this actor input, this would run successfully. But what I'm actually going to do is change this URL, because I don't know what video that actually is. I'm going to grab, this one's pretty short. So I'm going to backspace this and T. You can see that query string again, like I was talking about. I'm going to paste that in there. If I click on test step, node executed successfully. If I come over to memory, we have this in progress one. So you can see we have one running, and it's the actor we were just on. So if I go to runs, it's already succeeded because it was, literally one. But what we have is if I come over to storage, and I come up here to the top right, now you will need to scroll up, and I click on API, you can see we now have a list of different endpoints, okay? So a whole bunch of different ones. So come to API here. So like the API on the home page, right? The endpoints for this are different. We have run actor synchronously. But if I come into storage, we have different endpoints. We have get run, get input, get output, get data set items. This is actually the endpoint we want to use. So I'm going to copy this endpoint, right? And like I was saying, this method is get. And what I'm going to do is rename this to run actor. Then we're going to have another module, HTTP. And the method is get, like you saw in the documentation right here, get. And we don't need to send any body because we just need to retrieve this. Whenever you run an actor, if I come into storage, runs storage, you can see we have this data set ID. So every time an actor runs, even before it's done, it's auto-labeled with a unique data set ID. And all of the data is stored in here. So you can use this data set ID to your advantage. So what I'm going to do is copy this data set ID. And what this should do is return. Now, I may have this in here already because I copied it. You'll just want to paste it in between. Let me Control-Z this so you guys can see. So hopefully you can see here. I'll try and zoom in. But basically, we have this slash datasets, and then we have dataset ID. Okay, so it's just this long string of characters, and then we have a slash item. So you want to paste it in between these two slashes. So it is the same one because I copied it directly from the page. But what I'm going to do is click on test step. Okay, we have captions one. Basically, we have all the captions from the video, which is, good. The actor worked successfully, basically, is what this means. We have the channel handle, channel name, the different variables we turn on, whatever. So I'm going to rename this to get dataset item, get dataset items. Okay, but what we want to do is break up this flow. So we want to have part of it be running the actor, but because this is going to take a second, especially if you're doing something like scraping weights from Sales Navigator, Apollo, etc., it's going to take 10 to 12 minutes if you have 5,000 leads in there or something. And you don't want to just have this running, it's super inefficient, unprofessional, especially when you have clients and stuff. It just doesn't look good. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a webhook that Apify is going to paste to. Then we'll use this model with the dataset item that the webhook returns, and then we'll dynamically access that. So every time this actor runs, we will have a dataset ID that we can dynamically access, and every time it runs, we'll be able to get back those items and, map them into a Google Sheet or something. So basically what I want to do is come over to actor, go to integrations, and you can see this make one. If you don't know, when you create let me delete this. When I create a watch actor runs, and I add a hook, and then I select, let's see, I would need to add my other account here. Let me just name this. I just want to show you guys. Just gonna add my email, Or, yeah, let me copy this. I'll call this, goodness, dude, I'm doing everything. Choose a hook, add. I'm gonna call this demo. Add a connection. Connection type is, okay. Well, I'll just need to paste in my API key. So I'm going to grab, I guess this is good for the tutorial as well, because you want your API to be set up. So I'm going to copy this and then come into here, paste this API key in. I just want to show you guys how this works. So basically, we're going to need a list of our recently run actors. If I come back to this YouTube transcripts actor, right now we have 0 integrations. If I was to select YouTube transcripts and click on save, let's make sure this is working. Okay, see, now we have this YouTube, or this integrations. So you can see we have an HTTP request that's being posted to this webhook, okay? And it's enabled. But basically what this is going to do is whenever the actor is finished running, it's going to post to make. Now we can simulate this, or, do essentially the same thing, not simulate, sorry, inside of N8N. So I'm going to turn this off. And then, yeah, let me come back here, integrations, and I'm going to delete this webhook real quick. So I'm going to go into webhooks. Demo here. Okay. This should be gone. Okay. So we obviously can't use make. Zapier has a built-in one, it looks like. A bunch of different softwares do, but N8N does not. So what I want to do is select on HTTP webhook. Sorry, I'm stuttering so much. And the start one is basically when we want Apify to send off this trigger. So what I want to do is I don't want to get it, when an actor fails. I don't want to attempt to get that data set ID back and then map it and it'd be like an empty array or something. It doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to select it, run succeeded. So we only post to this webhook when it's succeeded. And I'm going to add a webhook in here. So I'm going to add another trigger. I'm going to search for webhook. I'm going to change this HTTP method to post. So this method is basically the method that the webhook is waiting for, or it accepts. Okay, so we want it to accept the post because this is a post method. I've run this before, that's why I know that. I don't know if they show this in here. They probably do in the documentation. Basically, when this is done, we're not getting info from N8N, we're sending info, so we're posting. So I'm going to change this to post, copy this URL. I'll listen for a test event just to test it, paste this in, click on save and test, and we do get data back. Now we don't get the data set IMID. It's fine though. So what I'm going to do is click on test workflow next to the webhook, and then we will try running this actor again. So input, let me go inside of here, copy this YouTube URL, exit out of this. It's waiting for the trigger. Paste this in, save and start. So whenever this is done, we should get the dataset item back. Okay. And let's see if it works. Okay, so workflow executed successfully. You can see we have a bunch of different stuff. Again, 99% of the stuff you're not going to use. But what we do want is this default dataset ID. If you don't see it, I believe you can just search for it. Yeah, default dataset ID. And we want to be able to map this in, because if we come back here into our get dataset IDs, or items, sorry, we have this dataset / and then we have the dataset item ID. So if we actually connect these two nodes, we can dynamically access them. So I'm going to realign this a bit. And I'll rename this webhook to after finish. And then we can map in the dataset ID, which is super good. So I'm going to change this to expression. And then we can just grab this dataset ID, or default dataset ID, and put it in between these two slashes. If I click on test step, you can see we get our transcripts back. So now what this means, and you can, this flow basically, you can use it with any actor. How you output the info after you get it back, after you get the info back from the dataset IDs, that's up to you, and that will be different depending on the actors, because some output leads, some output YouTube transcripts. But this basic flow here, and you could have different actors you want to run within a Google Sheet, and you could just change it in here and have the query string like that, blah blah blah, whatever. This flow basically will let you do this with any Apify scraper. So you run it as scraper. You get basically a notification inside N8N that tells it, hey, the actor's done, and Apify sends you the default dataset ID, and then you can get back the info from that actor. So if we try this end to end, I'm going to click on save, and then I click on test workflow, and then test workflow. This should work end to end. So waiting for you to call the URL. So what we should have just done is, actually it should be done. Okay, so we've executed the actor and then it's sent us back info saying it's done. We've used that dataset ID and we've successfully gotten back a transcript. You know, this will work for any YouTube transcript. I'm just using this actor for examples. But yeah, that's the whole flow. Hope you found it useful. Hey, thanks for watching to the end of the video. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to drop a like and subscribe. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. I'll get back to you as soon as possible. The blueprint to this whole scenario will be down in the description at the Gumroad link. You can get it completely for free. Besides that, everybody have a great day and peace out.